Hello and welcome to Veterans of the Valley. I'm Tom Turbyville. January the 16th, 1991 is an evening that few of us will ever forget. Maybe you've forgotten the exact date, but certainly not the event. We were glued to our televisions from before dinner time to dawn the next morning and beyond. We watched reporters tell us their stories through gas masks. And soon missiles called Patriot and Scud would become part of our everyday conversation. That night, which was actually 2:38 the next morning in Kuwait, U.S. warplanes attacked Baghdad, Kuwait, and other military targets of Iraq. Operation Desert Shield had become Operation Desert Storm. Randy South was a mortarman with 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines, a long, long way from home. Randy, welcome.
Thank you.
Talk a little bit about that. You were actually on the ground deployed long before the media knew it and had told us back in the United States before the air war started on that morning of January the 17th in Iraq.
Right, yeah. We had gotten there like 2 days before the air war had started, but we were deployed before that for a contingency anywhere else in the world. So they kept us there because of the Philippines. It was acting up a little bit of that area. And then 2 days before the war started, they moved us into Iraq. And then like spend a night there, and then the next day, and then that night, that's when the air war started.
Indeed. Let's go back and talk about when you first enlisted in 1987. You were actually too young to get in on your own, right?
I was 17 years old, and my mother and father had to sign for me to get into the Marine Corps. As you know, because I wasn't an adult yet, but I could sign up, but they had to sign for me saying that that was okay to do that.
Why'd you want to go that route?
You know, I really don't know. I just, I wasn't really ready for college yet, and I had a friend that went into the Marine Corps, and I was just kind of looking around, and I went into the Marine Corps office here in College Station, started talking to them a little bit, and next thing I know, I had signed up and went, you know.
Now for training, you were sent off to Hawaii, which was, I guess, a better place to be than when you were where you were about to be, but talk a little bit about your training before you were deployed.
Well, before we were deployed, I mean, every year we went on a 6-month deployment, you know, to Okinawa, Japan, and then from there you maybe went to the Philippines, and you were also the contingency. You know, you were supposed to be the first ones to go somewhere, while the other guys stateside, you know, you were the first ones to have to go. It didn't work out that way with Saudi Arabia. I mean, with you know, the Iraq situation, it was kind of different. We performed a lot of gas exercises, you know, when we knew that Iraq may have been trying to, because he did use gas a lot. So we were practicing nuclear, biological, chemical warfare quite a bit. Which is something we did, you know, we did it, you know, before this thing had broke out. We did it quite a bit, but not as hard as we did it when we knew that we may have a chance to go to Iraq.
Right, right. And then you were deployed, and you had been trained well, and it was tough training, especially training for biological type warfare.
Yeah,
right?
it's very difficult to fight. The gear you wear is very cumbersome. Your vision is limited. It's very hot. In those gears, I mean, you know, you will actually, you know, friends who are really good friends start to get after each other a little bit, because it's just so you can't move very well. It's hard to fire your weapon, and it's a difficult way to fight. You know, you'd rather not fight in a chemical environment if you had to, but we were prepared for it and we could do it, but it's very difficult.
We talked, when we were talking earlier, about the communication over there, and you were able to communicate with your family back home, and I want you to tell the story about the day before the air battle began. You didn't really know that it was going to begin that day, but you were talking to your dad. Right. Randy's dad, by the way, is Dave South. Everybody knows is the very familiar voice of Texas A&M Athletics. You were talking to your dad actually the day before the air war started. To talk a little bit about that and the consternation it caused him.
Right. When we had got there, they had MCI and AT&T had set up these huge phone tents, and it was kind of unique in that you know, in the rear bases, this is the way it was set up, so you could call home and, you know, talk to your family like that. They actually cut it off after the war started. You know, those phones were cut off. They didn't have any communication allowed back, just in case somebody was monitoring or said something wrong. But I had called him the day before the air war started, and I had talked to him a little bit on the phone. And building up to that, you know, the anxiety before you go is the hardest part, the anxiety. And then when I called him when I got there, I told him everything's fine. You know, this is where I'm supposed to be. I feel comfortable with being here, and everything's going to be all right. Don't worry about anything you hear. You'll hear from me again. And then that night the air war broke out. Well, he thought I knew something, and I really didn't. I was just trying to comfort them. Well, then the air war broke out, so they're thinking, well, he must have known something, and now it's all broke out, and he just didn't want to tell us. So they were on their, on their heels a little bit until I was able to, converse with them again and tell them.
So you all are deployed, and you meet up with some other troops, and I think you all were joking that you're waiting for the 2nd and 3rd to get there before you could start this thing?
Right. I was in 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines, and we were deployed. Our sister units were 1st Battalion, 3rd Marines, and 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines, and they were already in Iraq. Well, then when we got there, the joke was, because the war had started right after that, they waited to start it before we got here, so everything could be handled correctly, and they, because they've been sitting over there for 6 months in the hot desert. When I got there, it was more a cool time. It was, not as hot as the summer is. It was like in February, January, February in that area, so it wasn't as bad. We had it pretty good actually, because we stayed in Okinawa with the comforts of, being able to, do anything you want to do, eat, sleep, watch movies, whatever, without having to be in the field. And then when we got there, it was just kind of a joke, a running joke, just messing with them a little bit,
Now,
all in good fun.
A lot of your job with the 3rd Marines was involved in POWs, collecting POWs, and talk about that aspect of it and the kind of people these POWs were.
Right. When we got into the action and stuff like that, we started taking on so many POWs, and we were using a lot of psychological type warfare on them, dropping pamphlets on them, which you'll have some here in a minute to show. And the type of troops that were on the front line have been bombed for like 30 days straight from the air, and some of them were 16 years old. Some of them looked like they were 60 years old, and these were guys they just threw out there, like cannon fodder, just to slow stuff down. And they weren't motivated to fight. They weren't motivated to be there. These were just common people, not really trained that well. And you started kind of having compassion for them, because you could tell they did not want to be there. And we took on so many that we did have to serve other billets. I mean, I had to drive a truck with, I never really have driven any military vehicle, really. And we were having to drive trucks to take them back to POW camps, and just, because we took on so many. I mean, they were coming up to us. We were mixed in with them. Most time you keep your POWs at a distance. Well, you find us crammed in there with them, sitting there with a rifle, but, mixed all in with them. It was just, we had so many, and you could tell they just weren't going to fight, and they wanted out of it. And so we took them back to camps and fed them, and, they much more enjoyed that where we were at than out there just getting bombarded all day long with, our airplanes. It was just pretty bad on them.
Yeah, you got into a conversational relationship with a fellow named Ali.
Yeah,
Talk about Ali.
We just started talking. He made a gesture, this gesture, about, do I have a smoke? And I said no. And then I found him one and gave him one, and he said, what is your name? And I told him, I said, what's your name? And he spoke perfectly. He looks like we are now, a little bit of an accent. And I asked him, how long have you been in the Army? And he said, about 3. He asked me what month this was, and I told him. He said, maybe 2 months, 3 months. I said, I'm not really sure. And he said, and I said, are you in the reserves? And he's like, he didn't know what that meant. He said, I'm not sure what you mean. I said, well, why'd you join? He said, I didn't. They came to my house and they said, pack your stuff, you're going, and if you don't, we'll gouge your wife's eyes out. He made this gesture. And then you realize they're ruled by fear. And and he kept saying to me, he would say, this is not between Ali and Randy. This is Bush and Saddam, and he would do this. And, he just a common guy, just thrown out there to the wolves, and he was just a normal guy. He didn't want to fight, didn't believe they needed to be in Kuwait, and wanted to go home and see his family.
Were they scared? I know you told me about an incident where some drones flew over, and it kind of freaked them out, right?
Well, because, that 30 days of bombardment, and one time I read a diary off an Iraqi intelligence, or an Iraqi lieutenant officer, and he was talking about how every day, it was almost every day after the air war had started, that how they were getting bombed, just every day. I mean, it would start off, January 15th. We got, today aerial attacks, 16th, nighttime attacks, and it just never quit. And, I think that just demoralized them to the point that they were just scared to death. So we were collecting one day, and a drone flew over. The drones that they take the pictures of everything and try to and then take it back, and then they analyze it, and they send troops over there if they need, or send planes over there, or salvos from a battleship over there to hit that area. And when the drone flew over, every one of them hit the deck. They thought that was, they were fixing to get bombed again. And, we just realized, we looked up there now, it's a drone. We just picked him up and put him in the truck and took him back. But
right.
they were frightened to death of any kind of air support that came over him, because they had no air cover for them at all.
Yes.
We had air superiority, and it just changed the whole war right there.
Let's take a look at some photographs that you brought back from the Persian Gulf.
Okay.
And sort of put them up here on, talk about those as we're looking at them on the screen. The top left, that's a young Randy South, right?
Yeah, that was a young man then. That's actually the top left one. That's actually a flag that a Kuwaiti drove by and threw at us. As we were, he was in a civilian car and he came by and he threw us that flag, thanking us for liberating Kuwait. And he threw it at us and we just kept it. And the bottom left, that's actually a POW camp. Those are all POWs lined up in single file and they're in the green, and we're just marching them in there. They're getting, each one of them's getting searched again, and then they're going to take them in there and they're going to feed them.
So those are the POWs that are sort of crouched down
That's all of
outside the transport vehicle that I guess you had just driven, right?
Right, and that's just, that's not even a fraction of them. It looked like an Aggie football game at some time. All the people coming in, that's how it looked. Just so many of them. And then the top right one, that's an RPG I found. There's weapons laying all over the desert. Landmines laying all over the desert. You had to kind of watch where you walked. And, AK, 47s, just stacks of them, just hundreds of them, and hundreds of RPGs. And then the bottom right one, I don't know if you saw or not, that was the oil wells that they were capping as they left Kuwait, and they were blowing them up.
I see.
And then, they were just going to ruin all of Kuwait's, oil. If they can't have it, nobody can. And then, actually, on our way back after the war was over, I think it was Red Adair Group. They were over there already fixing those. After the war was over, maybe a day, we started coming back to our base in Kuwait or Saudi Arabia, and there they are already capping those oil wells. It was pretty fast how they got out there.
It's getting back to your being on the ground in the Persian Gulf, and I know you're going to show us some Iraqi equipment, including a gas mask, but you had your own gas mask and you were trained in this. But there were a lot of rumors that you had to fight off about when to use it. Is it coming now? There were some false alarms. Talk about that aspect of what you had to deal with.
Oh, on the first night when they came in and told us, second night on ground when the air war started, they came in and opened up our tent and they said, we're bombing Iraq. So we're all like, okay. Well, then about 30 minutes later, somebody comes running through there yelling, gas, gas, gas. That's the universal warning to, don your gas mask. And, at this time, we're so far away from the front line. We're not even on the front line. We're like deep into Saudi Arabia, and we're thinking, wow, he's already launched these things this far. How does that happen? And then, so we all put our gas mask on, and then it was a scuttlebutt, which is a rumor. That's what the Marine Corps calls a rumor. And somebody just got the wrong word, so there was no gas launch status at that time. But it got cold at night in the desert, really cold, and we were dressed up in desert gear. So one time we just took our chemical suits out because we knew how hot they were when we trained and put those on, and that kept us warm. Some guys, and this is actually true, some guys at night, everybody carries a body bag. I carry one for myself. That way if I get hit, you look on my pack, there's my body bag, you put me in it, send me home. That's just, you carry it,
Sure.
And some guys would sleep in those things. I never could do it.
No.
I just didn't want to sleep in my body bag because it was cold, and then sometimes you look over and they're zipped up in their body bag, just kind of, laying in there. That's what they're going to use. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'll just use my chemical suit.
You want to have the idea that should be a permanent type of thing,
right. They're using it like a sleeping bag. What they're using it for. I was like, no, I'm not using my body bag.
Oh, my goodness. You talked about taking some resistance, some artillery resistance, but the kind of resistance you took was pretty much hit and miss on the part of the Iraqis. They had no forward observer. Talk about that.
An artillery piece and a mortar piece, they have what is called a forward observer. He is the eyes of the weapon because that weapon does not see what it shoots. So you have a guy out there with binoculars and a radio and a compass, and he's looking around with his map and he's finding targets and he's calling it back to them and they'll shoot it. Well, Iraq didn't have any forward observers. They didn't have any guys that far up. So they would bring their artillery pieces out and they would just charge them up, the full charge, and then they'd launch it and just hope they hit something. A lot like the Scud. And the Scud did do some damage, but it's not a pinpoint weapon. It just goes up there and floats around in the atmosphere and lands, like the buzz bombs in World War II. They just knew how far it was and they engineered it to land in, on the continent of England. Same thing. They would shoot their Scuds and land like that, and they would shoot their artillery just blindly. And what would happen was we had air superiority, so they're flying around at nighttime. They'll see a flash in an area they know we're not in. The planes would go down and they would hit that area where they saw that muzzle flash. We had counter-artillery batteries who had a radar, so when it came over, it would pick up that trajectory. And then they would relay it to their guns, and they would fire right back on that position. So, anytime they did it, they lost that gun because they would get immediately attacked, and they would take out that gun that shot at us.
Indeed.
Some of them did land close to us. An artillery shell has I think it was 150 meter effective radius, which means not to kill, but maybe maim you or hit you, because you don't have to kill somebody to make them not fight. You can hit their leg. You can do little things like that to make them where they're not able to run and they're not able to fight anymore. So, but none of them. I don't think we suffered one casualty from that. Most of our casualties actually were friendly fire, and that's the bad thing. But we had I don't think we had any kills by the Iraqis on our unit personally.
You went to the Persian Gulf as a mortarman. You were trained that way, but then eventually you were trained as a forward observer
Right.
yourself.
Right.
That sounds like a dangerous job.
Yeah, I mean, you go out with the line companies. You're out there with the line company is the infantry soldier, the rifleman, and you have the radio, and you're always with the officer, or you're with the air officers. You kind of hang out with them because all line companies also have an air officer who calls in plane support because he knows how to talk to the air officers, the pilots, I should say. And so sometimes you would maybe shoot smoke out, and then they would call in the bird and say, okay, you see the white smoke, the red smoke, whatever, that's where we want you to hit. You're on the front with everybody else, but I mean, any place out there, I mean, is dangerous because, I mean, you want to take out somebody's artillery even though they're further back than the line company because they can make your life miserable. You want to take out the mortars because they can make your life miserable. So the lines do have it, the line companies do have it, it's a lot more dangerous, but out there, I mean, everybody's free game. It's dangerous for everybody.
You talked about the leaflets that were dropped to try to, I guess, sway the Iraqis and what was going on, and you brought some back, and we've got some here. These are some of the few that you have. Talk a little bit about those. Top left. Now? These were actually, I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but these are sort of sealed in plastic, and they were dropped from the plane.
Yeah, they were actually not sealed in plastic. They were paper.
Okay.
I sealed them just to protect them out with a laminate. But yeah, they would drop those just in these these capsules that would just open up and just blow this litter all over the place. And you were trying to get onto their troops. One, you had troops that hadn't been fed in a while. They had no communication. We knocked out all that stuff, so they're disarray. They're not motivated, and so you drop these leaflets on them to try to to coerce them to come over to your side, and then on the top left, when you see where he's on the left-hand side of that particular leaflet, it shows them all sitting around eating, having a good time, and then it shows this Iraqi, hey, you can come join us, just hold. And even the explanation on these is to hold it in the air if you ever see one, to hold that thing in the air, and we'll know you want to quit. We know you want to give up. And it shows him how he's explained to him that there's a Saudi soldier talking to the Iraqi soldier, hey, hold it in the air and come over and join us to eat. And then on the bottom left one, it shows an Iraqi tank getting hit by a stealth. I don't know if you can really see it, but it's like an invisible jet there on the left-hand side right above the tank. And then it shows our superior tanks and our superior helicopter just destroying their tanks at will. And then the top right, of course, that's Saddam himself, surrounded by, all these different guns on a broken tank, showing he just doesn't have a chance. And then the bottom right one, that's all the countries that are against you. This is all our countries we have. You have Saddam, and he's got nothing. Basically that's just psychological warfare, trying to get untrained, or not say most of them untrained, unmotivated troops to realize you're fighting a lost cause. Don't die for it.
Did you find that they were having an effect?
Oh, they had a big effect. Oh, yeah, they'd come up with 2 or 3 of those things in their hand, just waving them. They found me. You had guys, handfuls of them, just showing them to everybody, and those were very effective, and they're very effective against people who just. The morale is low. I mean, it's a motivator for them, like, I'm not dying for this, and look at these. They said they're going to treat us good, and we did. We treated them very well. All those POWs that we had, every one of them got meals, sometimes our own meals. If we had meals in our backpack, we didn't have enough to feed all of them, and we would have to take our own out and hand it to them, and feed them, and so they got treated very well,
I asked you if you were scared, and you said that most of your fight had to do with the buildup. Before you got
right,
there.
the anxiety, because at one point, there's a lot of rumors floating around. You're going, you're not going. You're going, you're not going. We'd have everything built up, and then all of a sudden you're not going. And then you start hearing the news all the time. At the time we were in Okinawa, so we saw the news nightly about how he's going to use gas and how this, and he's got the largest, and he did. He had the largest army in the Arab world. And when that happens, all the anxiety's building up, and you just, you were kind of scared then, and it was, I don't know if it's, if it's the same for everybody, but the minute I got in country, I had no more fear at all. And it's not that I'm a tough guy and I'm not afraid of it just went away. I felt like this is where I need to be, and I felt comfortable over there, and I felt comfortable in whatever I had to do, and you had adrenaline, but it's different from fear. You know, I think the fear buildup was the worst, and then once I got over there, I wasn't, it was just adrenaline, and I was ready to, actually it was the most fun I ever had in the Marine Corps was during that time. And I don't like war or anything, but it was watching the Marine Corps work or what it's supposed to do, and it's really amazing what it can do.
Did you all have the perception at the time that this was not going to last long, and did that keep your spirits up? Did you know that this was going to be something that would be relatively a short-lived conflict?
Right. It's kind of funny because you'd ask people their opinion on other Marines, and you get some crazy answers. Like I had a Marine Corps officer who was an Aggie, and I like him. He said, "Well, with the mechanized infantry, they got 48 months." I'm like, 48 months. That's a long time. But I started thinking about myself. I was thinking air superiority. Mm-hmm. I kept thinking about that. I was like, if you don't have the air, I mean, you don't really have anything. I mean, you need air. You need people to protect your people. You need people to go out and hit the other people's troops and armor and everything like that. I really thought, I didn't think it was going to be that long because I thought that we could really do a lot of damage to him. And they didn't have a Navy. We could bring our battleships right into the Persian Gulf and then shoot 16-inch guns on them at any time we wanted, and we could bomb them at any time we wanted, from the air. And I really didn't think it was going to last that long. I didn't know how long, but not anywhere close to 48 months. I thought that was way too long.
Let's take a look at some of the things that you brought today. Some of the artifacts that you brought with you. I'm going to reach down here, sort of out of camera shot, and give that to you, and hold that up.
This is an Iraqi helmet. I got this out of a tank. It was it's just the liner though. I mean, this is kind of what our guys had in World War II. You had this, and you put the steel pot on this. Well, they just were wearing the liners. A lot of their troops just had the liners. They're not well. They didn't have the best of gear. And I got this off I think a T-55 Russian tank, and it was just in there, and I just grabbed it. That's
here?
probably
I feel like we're show and tell.
This is a gas mask, Iraqi gas mask. Mm-hmm. Probably Russian too. A lot of their equipment was Russian.
There you go.
That's just an Iraqi gas mask. The filter actually goes right here. And what's kind of interesting about this, our gas mask, we actually had a nozzle you could pull down and you could put your canteen into it and you could drink water if you had to wear this. And I don't see that on these. So, if you ever got thirsty, it'd probably be a long time until you got out of the area that's contaminated. If you were thirsty, you'd probably have to wait a long time. But
all right.
And this is just bandoliers, Iraqi bandoliers. There's a number. I think that's the number 5 in Arabic. I'm not sure, but H harness. This is what they wear on their back, and they can carry their ammo around in it and stuff like this. That's kind of how it goes, like that. And then this is just a backpack of some sort, and has somebody's name on it there. A couple guys got scratched off. I don't know what that means, but
Right.
This is all Iraqi gear. This is just stuff we got off the POWs. Here's some cigarettes.
Yeah, show those. Those are Iraqi cigarettes.
Iraqi cigarettes, or Arabic in the Arab world. I'm not sure, but it's funny because on the back here it says Virginia blended tobacco, but this is what they were all smoking. Yeah. And then
so we were helping them calm their nerves.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. And then this is a tank manual for a T-55 tank. That one I got off. It's all in Arabic. Just sitting there inside the case. And then I asked an Iraqi. I had him over there and asked him what this was. That Ali.
Yeah. Sort of hold it there. There you go.
And
there we go.
I saw the planes on it, and then I turned around and I saw this on it, and I was like, "Hey, what is this?" And he opened it up, and he was looking at it, and he was reading it to himself, and then he goes, "Oh, this is directions to a party. Somebody was having a party, and this was directions to it." And I thought it was maybe something neat, but just somebody who's having an officer's party, and that was the invitation. I got that at the Kuwait airport, actually. We liberated the Kuwait airport. That's where we went into Elbow, Kuwait, and went into the airport, and that's where I got most of this stuff, actually.
I see. You told me earlier that your training in Hawaii really was what sort of told you a whole lot about what the Marine Corps was all about. And then 6 weeks later, after the conflict was over, after the Persian Gulf War was over, what in your mind are the Marines all about, other than I know you're proud to be one?
Yeah, it is different. It's a very small branch. The Army has, 800,000 strong, Navy probably about 800,000 strong, and Marine Corps is right around 200,000. I think the Air Force is probably 400,000 to 500,000. That's the numbers when I was in. It was close to that. And they're very small as far as how many officers they have per enlisted. So they're not officer top heavy, and they're more about light infantry. They're more about that's what they are. Not a whole lot of mechanized infantry in the Marine Corps. They have it, but it's not as big as the Army. The 3rd ID and all those guys, and it's huge. And it's just a different mentality. And I'm not taking anything away from any of the services, because they're all great. Our services are the best in the world. But the Marine Corps does have a different mentality. Mm-hmm. and it's hard to explain. It's like, as Aggie Land, you can't explain it, you just have to be. Same thing with the Marine Corps. It's just a lot of history. When we went to boot camp, the history is very big to them. And they do really drill the history into you. And it's like they say, when you become one, it's like somebody opened up your chest, and they take that eagle of an anchor, which is that our emblem, right, and they tattoo it right on your heart. And that's the way you feel. I mean, that's the way you really feel. It's just a esprit de corps, semper fidelis. And it really means something to them. And me, it's.
You bet. As well it should. After President Bush declared the ceasefire, you had to hang around for about 3 more weeks over there before you got to come home.
Right. And as I say, we were coming back down the road, and they called a ceasefire, and we're watching all the Red Adair guys out there capping those wells and everything. And we come back, and we're sitting there waiting to go home. And then, as you see, the guys who were there the longest got to go home first, and that's how it should work. And so we got there in country just 2 days before it started, so we're sitting there and sitting there and sitting there. And then, as it goes by, Marines look for things to do. I mean, at one point they had a full contact, football game going until somebody broke a finger and somebody's ear got halfway tore off, and the colonel said, no more of that. Then they had a smoker match, the boxing matches, and then he halted that. And they were just looking for things to do. And the food got to be where it was 3 meals a day of either veal or a hot dog, and maybe some corn or whatever. They just, basically our supplies had been taken away, and it was just limited stuff there. And finally, we got to get on the plane. It was a TWA plane.
Right.
Which is kind of funny, because, it's always talking about, no weapons on a plane. No weapons. And here we are putting in the overhead storage, putting M16s and M60s and all that other stuff. And it was
there's a whole lot more to the story of you coming home and the long, long trip to Hawaii, but unfortunately we're out of town. There's so much more to tell. But first off and most important is thank you for your service, Randy, and thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for what you're doing. I think it's great.
Thank you, Randy South. Operation Desert Storm lasted just 6 weeks at a cost of 148 servicemen and women's lives. So perhaps it will be little noted in our grandchildren's history books, lost somewhere between Vietnam and 9/11. Nonetheless, more than 500,000 United States troops risked their lives that winter more than 14 years ago, and we salute them all. Please thank a vet today. For Randy South, I'm Tom Turbyville. Please join us next time on Veterans of the Valley.